if you have custodied Bitcoin through the ETF, through your brokerage, well, the brokerage is holding your shares, and the ETF, which is holding your Bitcoin, which is actually using a custodian to hold the Bitcoin. So you have all this legal recourse, right? If something goes wrong, you can sue your brokerage, you can sue BlackRock, you can sue Coinbase. But what are you suing them for? You can't, if they lose the Bitcoin, they don't have the Bitcoin to give back to you. You're suing them for dollars, and your shares are priced in dollars, and they're redeemable for dollars. So you've made a fiat investment that's going to, presumably grow in value faster than the rate of inflation that's debasing your fiat, and maybe faster than other investment alternatives. But you're still very much in that fiat world, which is the world we were all born into and learned how to walk in and talk in. And so it's like moving to a different country with a different language and different customs when you go to self-custody. And it takes time, if that new country is your second country, it's a second language, it takes time to build comfort. And some people never really build the comfort if they can move to that other country and keep speaking their own mother tongue rather than their new tongue that they've moved to. So I think this is where these instruments become, these custodial instruments like the ETFs, they become a bit of a double-edged sword, because they're so easy and convenient for people coming from the fiat world to invest in the price, the dollar-denominated price of Bitcoin, and to miss out on that. They came to the land of the free and the home of the brave, Bitcoin, right? Like, you came to freedom land and you didn't you didn't stake your claim on freedom, because you're still in the traditional financial system and you're not really recognizing what the freedom gives you. So I don't have a fix for that other than to explain to people, here's the radical difference between an ETF and Bitcoin. And people can say, well, those differences are all very nice and interesting, but I don't care about them. All I care about is the purchasing power. And and I don't need it 24/7, 365. I'm just I'm going to sell a bunch when I need and withdraw from my brokerage and put in my bank account and pay with my Visa card. And those are very well established rails. But when you start to use Bitcoin, you start to experience the difference of self-sovereign money available everywhere in the world, verifiable, curable. And, one of the other things I try to tell people is it's not all or nothing. If you have $100,000 worth of investment, you can keep 50% in an ETF, and you can take 50% in self-custody. And you can start by taking $100 into self-custody and sit on it for a year and see, did it disappear on you? Did you lose it? Did you get scammed? Is it still there? Like, whatever it takes to get you the comfort, but you got to start working, you got to start speaking that second language, even if it's only 1 hour a day, so that you actually start to adapt to the new world that this thing represents. If we ultimately had nobody holding Bitcoin in self-custody and all of it institutionally held, it wouldn't be Bitcoin. It would just be some other kind of security, like the commodity of gold is actually traded. And that's not been great for gold. Gold has all these limitations that prevent it from being a good money in a modern global economy with 8 billion participants spread out throughout the whole world. But it's also, it's inconceivable that it could be money because so many people hold it in an alternative version of it, that the use of it is very confused and clouded. And at the very least, people aren't able yet to hand each other ETF shares, so they can clearly see, if I've got $100,000 worth of ETF Bitcoin and I want to buy a $50,000 used car from you, I got to sell the ETF. I got to go to the bank. I got to get this, that, the. If I have Bitcoin, I can meet you in a parking lot, and you can give me the keys, and I can give you the Bitcoin, and we're done.
You can give me the car keys. I can get the Bitcoin keys.
Yeah, we trade keys. Well, it should be your key. You shouldn't reuse keys that I have, because I might have kept a copy. But you show up with your new keys. You share the public side of those keys with me, and I'll get you Bitcoin, and you'll give me the car keys, which I hope you haven't made a copy of.
Is there, yeah, is there a threshold that we need in order, like how many? I mean, we talk a lot about like how many nodes and how much we need there, but is there a threshold also like for how many people we need or how much percentage of Bitcoin should be held by individuals in self custody in order for it to avoid being like bank coin or like not Bitcoin anymore?
Probably not. Like it's how ubiquitous, how widespread its use becomes. But already, there are a number of circular economies in the world, whether it's in Costa Rica or El Salvador or Madeira, and there's probably other, or Lugano, that you can get by literally just with Bitcoin, and that there are plenty of people who prefer to receive Bitcoin, and they're newcomers to the space. They've been indoctrinated or won over by the local community. And there's plenty of people, who I don't think anyone makes a living off of this. But there's plenty of people zapping each other on Nostr, sending value back and forth. So there's already like, if you want to live a Bitcoin lifestyle and you're prepared to make the move to those countries, interesting that the analogy I was using now becomes a literal thing. If you want to move to those other countries and learn the language that you need to speak there, then uh, then you can actually exercise your Bitcoin lifestyle if you want to, and that'll keep happening and growing. I think that there's momentum behind that, even though some of these markets may at some point face some kind of setback, whether it's regulatory or value or keep people moving from one to another, or leaving. But it doesn't have, like, Bitcoin doesn't need to take over the whole world to be valuable, as we've already seen. And initially it found a niche in goods that were, in the Silk Road, right? And goods that people wanted, but that weren't legal. So it found a dark net, a black market that it catered to. Then it found a store of value. Now it's expanding into investment grade, collateral grade, all this kind of other thing. So it's interesting to see where it gets adopted, by who and what communities form around it. And eventually those things get interconnected between one another. Right? It may not look like people dealing locally in Lugano or in Costa Rica in the jungle have much to do with Wall Street, but lo and behold, they're going to be connected by virtue of the fact that they're both using the same currency, right? The same fundamental underlying thing. And they're both using it at a abstracted level, but for those people who have it at the base layer, they can move from one to the other. So I don't know exactly what it's going to mean and how it's all going to play together. It's the world is way too complicated for a single individual or even for a collective thought group, to a think tank, to truly understand the complexities of it. And that's part of Bitcoin's advantage. It outsmarts all of us by just playing to where it's got a need, and it's far too complicated for individuals to analyze what that means.
One thing I got to understand is I I didn't accept Bitcoin as payments 1.5 years ago, and then a partner of mine forced me to. And since then, I only accept Bitcoin from partners
Right.
because I thought it's complicated. I thought it makes problems with taxes and bookkeeping and all of that. Turns out it's super easy. Like, there's like no hassle with
Well,
that.
this is it. Like, you hit the nail right on the head. And this was the point I was making about self custody. And you can make it as well about transacting Bitcoin that is in your self custody with other people's whose self custody it's in. Like, you need to get like a Lightning wallet and load it up with a bunch of Lightning and go to a conference where there's people selling stuff. And maybe you're selling something or getting some value. Like, you go to a restaurant and you pick up the tab in fiat and everybody sends you Bitcoin for their share of the deal. And then you're going and you're spending, you're buying somebody's book, you're buying somebody else's panties for Bitcoin, you're buying somebody else's seed signer, and you're transacting in Bitcoin, and you're saying, oh my God, I've totally forgot what it was like to deal with money. Right. I've been dealing in credit cards, the whole time, and then paying off a bill with this and that and the other. Like, here I'm actually exchanging value with people. We're sending money back and forth, and it's easy and it's instant and it's reliable, and it's in money that I trust. It's money that I value. And, so I'm accumulating, I think hard about spending the Bitcoin because it's real money that I value. I'm delighted to do things to receive it because it's money that I value. And it's different than receiving money that you intend to spend on frivolities at all. So there's no way. There's no way for me to explain it secondhand to somebody who hasn't experienced. The whole point I'm saying is experience it firsthand. It doesn't have to be your life savings. Take a couple of $100, right, and start to experience it. But this is why I do think that there's so many Bitcoin conferences now, especially Bitcoin only ones. They're small, which is also really good because they're affordable. There's going to be one not too far from anybody, and they all feature these marketplaces where you can and other people who are walking around with Bitcoin on them. So you can find ways to spend your Bitcoin, and the wallets are getting better. Like it's all moving in the right direction, and the tipping points don't happen just when everybody's ready. They happen when something then causes a chain reaction that leads to tipping. But you can pre-experience that, and if you do, I think the advantage of it is you just have more confidence that it's going to happen, and for when it does happen, you're already there and ready and prepared. And I think that's what drives a lot of Bitcoiners. They want to be ahead of the pack. They want to teach everybody else and get them to join them, but they appreciate being here early. And when you're here early, that means the pack isn't here yet. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. If you want to be ahead of the pack, then that means that they're not here yet. And when they're all here, you're not ahead of the pack anymore. You get to walk around saying, "Oh, I was here before everybody else was," but nobody gives a shit.
I love that. I love that analogy. And I think it's also because we are early. I think we kind of owe it that that's the point you're making, that we at least try self-custody, like get some signing device, just like try it out with 100. Like you can even just like download a wallet on your phone and try it with like $100 to like have your own keys and like write it down and all of that. It's like, it's very easy and very affordable to do. And like, I think especially because we're so early, it's almost an educational thing that you have to do to understand Bitcoin better, and like maybe setting up your own node, setting up a wallet, maybe connect those two, like maybe even like have some solo mining, like just trying to understand the network and learning from that is, I think, very key in those early revolutions that you as an individual can do.
Right. Absolutely.
One more thing that you were also kind of pointing to, and I think I saw last time that you saw on a podcast a little bit talking about that, is the summer topic, core versus not. It seems like less and less people now are talking about it. It seems like the peak was over. I don't know if it's just me or if it's actually over. How did you observe this whole topic, and what does this mean that we are so heavily in discussion about something? I think it was the most discussed since the block size wars, at least how I kind of observed it from afar.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to talk about it at too lengthy a time because I've done a bunch of other podcast appearances recently that have exhausted my desire to speak about this. So I'll be quick about it. I think that there's two camps coming from very, very different starting premises, and neither one has been perfect, to say the least. And they've both been talking past each other. Like the original criticism of Core was they're making changes that don't appear to have any benefit. It doesn't smell right. They're shutting down conversation about those changes. That doesn't smell right. There's something about the process that is upsetting. And then that got escalated into a whole discussion about about things that are the worst potential consequences of these of these unprofessional and examples of the behavior on Core. So that's where a lot of concern has come up that I think is very valid. And then on the flip side, the Core apologist side and the Core side have said, listen, technically you don't know what you're talking about. It doesn't matter how we're getting here. What we're doing is right. And so this has escalated now into, and it escalated pretty quickly into name calling, from at least from one side to the other. And now it's character assassinations from both sides. And I don't really want to participate in that anymore. I think people have behaved the way you expect them to behave in an adversarial system where it's like me or him, one side or the other. But what I really appreciate about Bitcoin is it's a system that's neutral towards players and objective, like rational in its conduct. And I want to bring it back to a rational conversation. How, what ought core to do, or maintainers of reference clients for Bitcoin, what ought they to do, and how ought they to do it? It doesn't, if you do the right thing in the wrong way, you might get a very wrong outcome, because Bitcoin isn't only a technical system, it's a social system. And I think that if there's anything that this proves as a concrete example of, it's like Bitcoin is a social system. And if you do something that technically is irrelevant, but you do it in a way that upsets a whole bunch of the users, then a whole bunch of the users might no longer trust you to maintain the reference client. And that's what's started to happen. And unfortunately, this whole conversation has now become very personal between individuals, and personal attacks. And, and that's not the conversation to have, because that's very fiat, in my view. So, like, for me, I'm actually taking like a whole cleanse from social media. People they fast from food, or they take a cleanse from toxins. I'm taking a break from social media for the month of November. And it's only like November 7th now, so it's only been a week for me. And boy, am I having a lot of clarity and better control of my emotions and everything, because I'm not spending time watching this fight going back and forth and feeling that I have to weigh in on it or not. The thing needs to cool down. And as you said, already people are saying, well, it's gotten to the point where they want to step away from it as well, right? There's a danger in everyone stepping away from exhaustion, because then only a few people are left involved. And if there is something that needs to be addressed, then people aren't, then that presents its own problem. But taking some time to gather your thoughts and let new ideas emerge that are more synthesizing of the ideas rather than adversarial and, one side or the other, that's what I really want to see happen. I think that's what I'm going to push towards. I'm really careful to try to be as objective as I can be. That doesn't mean not taking sides, but it means not getting personal. And, and it's difficult to do when the criticism you have of what's happening is somebody's personal choice. But what I want to say is, like, your personal choice to call that person a name was an error here. That doesn't mean you're wrong about whether you should run core or not. It doesn't mean you're wrong about your technical analysis. But going about this by telling people who have their opinions that their opinions are worthless, or that they're subhuman, or that they're retarded, or that all this kind of stuff is not helping you in your cause. It's just you emoting like a child. And we should not behave like children here. We should behave like objective, rational adults trying to steer and shepherd and provide, what's the word that I'm looking for? Good stewardship over something that's becoming all the money in the world. And it's okay that it goes through these ugly periods, right? It's not like, oh no, Bitcoin won't succeed because it went through this period of bickering back and forth and name calling. We could make it, if we choose to behave in one way versus another, it'll be better. And one of the things that may come out of this is people may learn to act more like adults. They may realize that behaving like children isn't getting them what they want, and that emoting and stamping their feet and calling other people's names isn't an effective strategy. And that if they stepped back, and I don't want to say that's everybody in this thing, but like, if they stepped back and presented the facts as they are and explained them as they are, and were patient about it and mature about it. And that doesn't mean they have to entertain every single person's immature behavior and respond to it in a mature way, but ignoring immature behavior beats responding to immature behavior in an immature way.
The first thing that every Bitcoiner does, and the most important activity that every Bitcoiner keeps on doing, is buying Bitcoin. And I personally use Relay to buy and sometimes also spend or sell my Bitcoin. And there are two main reasons why I do so. The first one is it's Bitcoin only. They do not do any shit coins. They do not do any cryptos, any stocks, or anything else. This is a tool, an app that is fully focused only and solely on Bitcoin. The second one is self-custody. They give you the keys to your Bitcoin the moment you buy them. You never give them the control over your Bitcoin, and you don't have to trust them because you can verify that you and only you have the keys to your Bitcoin. There's no third-party risk. There's no freezing of your assets. There's no rug pulling. There's nothing of that. Download Relay, the app, on your phone, or go to relay.app on your browser and use code Robin to save fees and get cheaper Bitcoin. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called micro-seed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With micro-seed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today, and you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io.